Hello and welcome to this video demonstration of the rehab application using the SunSPOT. First, I'd like to show you the hardware. We have a workstation or a PC which is connected to the base station and free rangers that can measure and transmit sensor data. So there you have it. And of course we have our application. It's called the rehab application using the SunSPOT. So as you can see, we are here at the main screen. This is the first screen that comes up for user verification. This was the basic form of security that we decided to put so as to prevent unauthorized users from viewing patient data or collecting patient data. So we'll go ahead and try logging in with a username A and a password S. Now it gives us a message saying that it's an invalid username or password, please try again. That is because this is not an authorized user, so we will go ahead and sign in using a valid username and password. So I will log in as an administrator. Now as you can see here, this is the main task selector from which the therapist can decide several options. But his first option is to create a new patient. If he has a new patient that he wants to work with, he can create a new patient profile. Or if he's logged, if the therapist with system administrator rights, then he has the option to create a new therapist profile. We did not want every therapist to have this option available to them, because we only want authorized users to be able to create therapists. A therapist can create a new patient profile and enter the first name, last name, and the other details of the patient. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a patient whose name is going to be Andrew Smith. This is going to be 45 years old. He's going to live on street 123 West ABC Street. He's going to be city is LA, state California. And let's just quickly add him to the database, and we have a feedback to see if the patient was added correctly to the database, and if it's successful, we get a message saying success, and it'll take us back to the task selected. And once we have added the patient, let's look for him so we can begin a new session to get measurements. For example, his name is Andrew, so let's search for him by his first name. Okay, so we have found his profile. Now as we entered 123, as you can see, it's his details pop up, and you can verify whether it's a correct person. If there are more than one users with the same first name, for example, Jane, then all the records with the first name Jane will be displayed, and you can select the correct Jane based on their ID number or their last name. So let's just go back and enter Andrew, because we're working on Andrew right now. And we have the option of viewing history, where we can see previous sessions that have been recorded by the therapist. But we will start a new session. It will be a new therapy session. Now to start a new session, what we need to do is we need to first turn on SunSPOT. To give you a quick view of what the SunSPOTs look like. So here we have the base station, which is connected to the PC. which communicates to the free range sunspots. Now these have built-in radios which can transmit sensor data wirelessly to the base station. So what we'll go ahead and we'll do is we will reset them so as to get them ready. So what's going to do, it's going to blink 3 times to indicate that it's restarting, and once it's ready the red light is going to go on. So now as you can see, both the red lights are on. Now what we can do is we can begin a new session. Once the sunspots are on, we click on start new session, and the base station is going to check and see how many heartbeat signals it can find. So for example, in our case it has found 2 free rangers. The next step will be to decide how many sunspots we want to use for this session. So for this session we want to use both these sunspots. Next step would be to configure this sunspots to select sensors measurements that we want from them. So now suppose for the first sunspot we accelerometer Y, accelerometer Z, and tilt X. So let's go ahead and configure that sunspot. So what happens now is the base station transmits the list of the free ranger, and the free ranger configures so that it will only sample from these sensors, and it will not waste battery sampling from the other sensors. So let's go ahead and click next. Now we configure the second spot. Suppose for the second spot we want accelerometer Z, tilt X, and tilt Y readings. And we go ahead and select those. Now once the sensors have been configured, graphs for each sensor reading will be displayed on the main screen. For example, here is the accelerometer Y reading, accelerometer Z, and the tilt X for spot 1. For spot 2 we have accelerometer Z, tilt X, and tilt Y, just as we had selected. So now let's go ahead and start collecting samples. So what we do is click on start logging, and as you can see, samples begin to collect. And if I show you what happens when we move these. These are actually sampling data. So what happens is the flashing green light means that the sampling is being done and transmitted. If I bring it back to the main screen, and we can, once we are done, we can pause logging the data, and we can bookmark, or we can label text on we can label certain areas of measurement. If you want to magnify it, we just double click and it becomes bigger. If you want to go back to the previous screen, just click there, and we can tag data from any of the sensors and save it. We can save any session. Our next steps would be to be able to do some form of pattern matching. to the data selected. And thank you for watching this video demonstration.